What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Dead Noise. I'm Chris, and today, thanks to the power of Zoom, I am here with the Philadelphia-based post-rock band Hiroe. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Good.
Doing good.
Good.
So, first things first, your new album Wield comes out June 20th via Pelagic Records. How did the writing and recording process compare to that of your debut EP?
So Hiroe actually started off as just like a pandemic project, right? Like we did not know anything was going to happen with this. I wrote some songs. I reached out to some friends that I had played music with before and said like, "Hey, I think I got something. Do you want to do something?" And they reached out and said, "Yeah," and we ended up putting out Raw, right? And we were very fortunate that a lot of people ended up liking it as much as they did. Um, The difference between this record and the last record, I'd say, is just more material for one, but like two, they're actually supposed to be like thematic counterparts. So the name rot is like the meaning behind that is to fashion something out of metal.
Mhm.
And then wield obviously is to wield something, right? So we're not necessarily saying like aggressive wield this sword, right? More like, hey, we've got this opportunity now. Like what do we do with it, right? So as far as growing as musicians, I don't know. I've been kind of leading this outfit for a good bit now, and I feel like we have like really good people, really good players. Everyone's like just got like a really awesome mindset. There's no one that we work together with where they're like, "Oh, I can't do that. My artistic integrity," right? Like, no, everyone's just super chill. Like, yeah, let's try this, let's try that, you know? So yeah, it's been a pleasure for me anyway.
I joined a few months before the recording, actually. So that in itself was certainly a daunting ask. I remember jumping on calls and meeting up with Eric and him saying like, "Hey, we have 80 minutes of music that we're going to record, and then we're going to go play a festival in Indianapolis. Like, are you in or out?" And to me, the answer was obviously yes.
Mhm.
Like we put in the work for sure. The lead ups to the recording, um, we're very productive. I think we were well prepared entering the studio, and to me, I think the recording process was a breeze. We knocked it out pretty quick. Um, yeah, I thought it was a great experience overall. Mario being in there, being long-term friends with Eric, I think really helped. You know, keep us on task. Being half cat herder, half cheerleader, you kind of have to be both. So, but he was awesome.
Yeah, and I would say, for me, I joined, this is the first record with Hiroe for me. I joined, I think, as Eric was kind of rounding out the songs. Like I think he had most of them kind of in the can by the time that I joined, but maybe we were kind of polishing and throwing finishing touches on. And for me, I think, the chat, like as in terms of a challenge with this record and growing as a musician, this is the first project I've done that was really fully instrumental.
Mhm.
So just kind of getting comfortable with like not having vocal cues and things like that to work off of in and of itself is a challenge sometimes. Just the sort of the length of the songs and the number of songs that we recorded, all of that kind of presented a little bit of a challenging environment, but overall it was really rewarding. And yeah, to Brian's point, I mean, when we went into the studio, I think we were very, very prepared. So I don't, there was not a lot of, um, there wasn't a lot of screwing around, I guess is the way I would put it. And there wasn't a lot of like, we're going to do 10 takes of this song. I would say most of the songs, it was kind of like one or two decent takes and then, maybe some punching in here and there, but it was for that much material, it was pretty straightforward.
I'm really curious for you guys, considering you guys actually are musicians. I have my favorite like guitar players and bassists, and as someone who plays bass as a hobby, I have people that I look up to. But for you guys, like who would you say are your main inspirations and your favorite players on your individual instruments?
Growing up, playing guitar, I looked up to a lot of like guitar hero types.
Hmm.
Like Steve Vai, Paul Gilbert, like more virtuosos versus, what kind of what we do. I wouldn't say I listen to a lot of that music today. So I would say like in terms of instrumental artists or just bands that I really like, like Godspeed You Black Emperor, Caspian, This Will Destroy You, these are like, titans in sort of the post-rock and instrumental music world. Night Verse is another one. Also, I think my introduction to post-rock was probably Explosions in the Sky.
Hmm.
They're an iconic band too. So I think a lot of those, I kind of draw a lot of inspiration for this kind of music.
Probably a lot of my big influences. I really, started playing music really in a hardcore band years and years ago. So, big influences for me are bands like Bad Brains, and the Cro-Mags, and sort of early in the sort of progression of my musical taste, I guess. And then, progressing in through stuff like Quicksand, and Fugazi and Jawbox and a lot of DC stuff. I'm really partial to. And I think the DC stuff probably had, like, over the years, especially as I got older, probably made the biggest mark on my playing,
Hmm.
over any of the other stuff that I listened to over the years. And so, and then I have kind of pretty eclectic taste. I guess I'll listen to almost anything if it's good. So, I still listen to a lot of classic rock and stuff that a lot of people probably consider boring these days. And I would say, like, if I was to pick like one drummer, that was probably the most inspiring for me, it'd probably be somebody like Stuart Copeland.
All right, if we're talking guitarists, I can think of just two right now. Um, Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead. If you see the guy play, it's like the guitar is like just an extension of himself. You know what I mean? It's so awesome and impressive. And I might get like so much shit for this, but John Frusciante from the Chili Peppers,
Uh,
he's such a soulful guitar player. It like speaks to me. And he comes from that whole Hendrix school of guitar, and I could never ever accomplish anything like that. But like, yeah, I think he's an amazing guitar player. If we're talking about like bands, I would say I didn't like I didn't get inspired by like virtuosos. Like when I started playing guitar, I knew this metal guy, and he's like, "Yeah, check out like Steve Vai, or yeah, check out like Metallica." And it's like the most discouraging way to start off your musical journey. Like, oh, I can't ever do any of this, right? So I migrated more towards like bands that like just had like really strong songwriting. So I love bands like Nirvana, like just super simplistic, but like man, when they hit you really hard. Um, Bands like My Bloody Valentine, a lot of textural stuff. That was like one of the first bands where I viscerally felt something, and I felt sick because it was swirling, right? And then I got like really used to it. Bands like Radiohead and Mogwai have had like this profound effect on me because they're just really strange bands. They're really pretty, but they're like really odd. And then one last band, Sunny Day Real Estate. I don't know
mm.
if anyone's heard of them, but like Sunny Day Real Estate is just this they're like mid 90s emo, if you want to label it that, but I love them. They're impressive.
Yeah, they're great. And I love what you said about like looking up to bands that maybe weren't the most musically sophisticated, but the songwriting was so strong. Because personally, one of my favorite bands is Everclear.
Mm.
And that I wouldn't say that their music is super complex, and that's not a dig at them, but I just think Art Alexakis is just so good as a songwriter and a lyricist that he doesn't have to go out and do all sorts of crazy things. He can stick to one, it kind of like AC/DC. They can stick to one thing, one chord structure, and they can be fine for their whole career.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that's a very solid thing that a lot of people might overlook in a way because it's like I tend to do this as a Rush fan. It's like nobody comes close to Rush in my opinion, or Blue Oyster Cult. But like I have to remind myself that like just because the music isn't super intricate or complex, that doesn't mean it's not as good, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, musical skill is it should be in service of writing decent music.
Yeah.
So if you're, you can certainly be all skill and still churn out awful stuff that nobody wants to listen to. So I'll get one more plug in, and that's for Unwound. I was thinking about like what ties my kind of past musical taste to the stuff that I'm doing now together, and that's Unwound, is the band that I would say kind of ties it all together.
Anytime I get to talk with a band about a specific album release, I love talking about the artwork because it's in some ways it's just as important as the music. So, and I love the tone and the colors or lack thereof that are on this album cover. So I gotta ask, like, what was the visual intention and how does it coincide with the music in your guys' eyes?
The story, I guess, behind like why the photo spoke to me was just because she looks like just defiant, like optimistically so. And she's like just carrying these two things in her hands. And I've always been one to really appreciate stark kind of imagery, like very black and white grays. I feel like people can relate to photography more than art because sometimes some of the art it might not speak to you, right? It might be like some super duper something, surrealistic, whereas photography, you're like, oh, that's a really cool whatever car or whatever, you know what I mean? So people can kind of like start to grab at something at least. So, but yeah, that's the reason why I picked that photo.
And what can fans expect from a live Hiroe show?
This is the first instrumental band I've ever been a part of, and certainly the first band that has three guitars. Um, but I wouldn't say that we're super guitar heavy in that sense. I think we definitely balance things out in terms of, with the layers. It's never just a full onslaught of three guitars the whole time. But yeah, I mean, I think we have a pretty good live show in terms of the flow and how things are. It's very with Eric's songwriting, it's orchestrated very well. So that, we have both really pretty beautiful moments and also like really crushing emotional moments too. So I'd say, it'll be like a roller coaster, essentially.
It's a broad range of emotions, is what I'd say. You'll get a little bit heavy, you'll get a little bit of chuggy, you'll get a little bit of the pretty, it also depends on the bill. If it's a heavier bill, we'll play heavier songs, and if it's a lighter bill, we'll play our lighter songs. But yeah, wide range of emotions.
And hopefully people who come to our shows get the impression that we're like having a good time.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, everyone looks like they're having like the best time ever. And I don't know what it is. Like, I believe me, it's not like one of those things like we gotta like rehearse and like look like we're having the best time ever. Like, no, it's weird. This is the first time I've played with a bunch of individuals that just look like they're just like just stoked out of their minds to just play. There's a joy in playing, right? Um, like Jill and Brian, if you see footage of them playing live, they're literally smiling from ear to ear the entire time. John's just doing one of those like he's kind of stomping around, he's jumping and he's clapping, right? I don't know what Dan's doing. I don't look back at Dan, right? Most
I'm
of
in
the
the
time
back.
I'm just like staring at my feet or something, man. I'm like true shoegazer in that sense, I guess, right? So, but yeah.
Before I let you guys go, this is my favorite part of every interview. I have a speed round for you guys. So I got 5 questions. We can Let's not start with Eric. Let's start with you, Dan, then Brian, and Eric. It's the same question all around. I got five of them. If you want to elaborate, you're more than welcome to. I'm not too strict with the speed part of the speed round. But the first question, your favorite song to play live?
Tides.
I would say Collider. With the tappy part, it's definitely very showy, very flashy, and the crowd loves it.
Black Mountain, dip into the old catalog. It's like this crushing song, right? Like heavy, super riffy, some cool technical stuff, and it's still like really pretty. So
Your most embarrassing moment on stage?
it's too many to count.
I always love this question.
Well, let's see. With this band, let's see. I broke a stick at Post Fest last year, and it caused me to have a little bit of a hiccup in my playing, and that was a red face moment for sure.
Yeah, also post-fest. I think I was headbanging too hard, so my in-ear cable got disconnected from my in-ear itself. So I lost, one ear. But luckily they had the monitors running, so I made it to the end of the song.
Yeah, same with me. So I was actually trying to enjoy myself. It's like rocking out a little bit. The in-ear falls out, right? So we run clicks in our ears. And
Mhm.
if you're rocking your head too much, these things tend to fall out. And it did happen. And I start off the song. I kick it off, right? And everyone's like in the band just kind of like looking at me like, dude, like you're off by like, I start to figure it out like, oh no, I'm off by like a beat, right? And because we're playing to a click, it would be really noticeable like during a change. Like it would sound like someone screwed up really bad. Either the whole band screwed up or this one guy screwed up, right? So it'd be me. But yeah, it was during that post-fest show. Yeah, I was rocking out a little bit too hard and lost in-ears.
Your dream tour lineup.
Maybe Unwound and we got to do Pelagic Solid and mention the Year of No Light, which I think might be my favorite Pelagic band. So so yeah, maybe I'll kick it off there. Those are my two on my wish list.
I would say ISIS. If Aaron Turner ever decides to reunite, that would be very cool. And then sticking with the pelagic theme, Mono, I think that would be super cool to tour with those guys too. They're incredible.
All right, well, you stole my ISIS thunder, man. Now I'm on the spot. Now I don't know what to say.
It's not the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
No, no, Anthony Kiedis is just he drives me crazy. No, let me see. All right, I'll call it my friends. Spotlights, incredible band, super awesome. I've known these people for the better part of like 20 years. They're amazing human beings outside of music, and playing music, they're like just incredible. They're so inspiring. Um, Sticking with the pelagic theme, sure. I'd say either Psalm because we haven't done anything with them before. Year of Light, they're like epic. They have like two drummers. It's like insane, right? Um, or uh, or our friends Shiloh. They seem to know how to have a good time on the road, and we've played with them before, so they're super fun.
Your favorite thing to do outside of music?
For me, it's probably hanging out on the beach. That's which is what I do every summer for at least a couple of weeks. So that's probably my favorite thing to do that isn't playing the drums.
Yeah, I love just being out in nature. Avid backpacker, bike packer. If it's out in nature in the mountains or whatever, I'd love to be there. So that's what I like to do.
I'm a big football guy. I love football, so you have a hard time tearing me away from a screen on a Sunday. So I'll say that, right? Just watching football, especially in this town, Philly. They're a big sports town. It's crazy. They're super passionate.
And this is my always my favorite question, the last one. The song you wrote that means the most to you.
Yeah, I would say Um, Waiting, which is the song we were all kind of talking about, or that Eric and I were talking about earlier. I just feel like that song just hits all the right chords for me, I guess, emotionally. It just kind of um, it's that sort of swelling epicness and that just the overall sort of feel. And it has some um, it has a little bit of there's some I would say some Middle Eastern feel to certain parts of that song, and so it's just kind of um, an interesting amalgam of emotional content as well as sort of musical influences. And out of all the stuff that we've written, I would say that one is it's just the most sort of hits me in all the right places.
Yeah, I would also say I've been waiting. This was kind of our favorite during the lead ups to the studio, and we ended up kind of sort of reworking it too, with the help of Mario. And yeah, I think, like Dan said, there's a lot of it's not all pretty, it's sweeping, but there's a lot of tension. It does really build, and I think the payoff at the end is really, really worth it. And yeah, I'm really excited to play it live. I don't think we've really played it live yet, so I think being able to show that to our fans live is will be cool.
It's hard not to pick that song, right? Especially because you're like a horror guy, and there's like a Michael Myers part in the middle of the whole song. It's kind of cool. It's kind of weird. You'll hear it. You'll be like, oh man, that reminds me of the Halloween theme, you
I
know?
never thought about it that way.
But and we throw a lot of different instrumentation, especially on that part, you know. But I'll say Black Mountain. Um, Probably. So life takes over, right? Get married, have some kids, and you don't play music for a while. And for whatever reason, it takes the end of the world to happen for you to like do the thing you love again. And so I say Black Mountain, because that was like the first song that I wrote coming back into music after like a 10-year absence, 10 plus year absence. We've had like a lot of positive feedback, like it's surprising. Like it's crazy. Um, yeah, everyone's been like super, super stoked. So thank you.
Yeah, same. I think the beauty of instrumental music is that, it's all up to interpretation to the listener. So, anyone can apply their own, feelings and history to our music, which I think, makes it beautiful.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite things about instrumental music as well, is how subjective it is. Like musical skill is obviously like you can tell when someone's just objectively good at what they do, but interpreting the meanings of different songs, the subjectivity of it is one of my favorite things as well. But yeah, thank you guys so much. I hope we cross paths again soon. This was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun talking with you. Love what you guys are doing, and yeah, thank you guys again. And to everybody who watched this interview, thank you for watching. And until the next interview, stay tuned, stay scared, and I'll catch you later.